Hello children, I hope that you all are doing fine. I welcome you all to our special English hour. Here we learn lots of new things, and by learning these things, we also have fun. Are you ready for some fun? Let's get started. Children, we all know that there are different genres in stories, which is why the books that we read also have different genres. Genres are types. Do you remember the different types of stories that we read? Let me refresh your memory. We learned how there are different genres in books. There is crime, there is thriller, there is mystery, there is biography, autobiography, and many more. Along with this, we also have fantasy. Now, fantasy books are those where stories that are created are not realistically possible, which means that the writer creates a new world, and this is an imaginary world. Have you read any kind of stories like these? I'm sure you must have. We have Jataka tales. We have Panchatantra. These are some of the Indian works in the field of fantasy books. Children, we all know that it is very important for all of us to learn new words. So today, let's learn some new words. You will see these words in the story when we read it. So I request you to please make a note of these words in your notebooks. Curiosity, curiosity, curiosity. Curiosity killed the cat. Feeble, feeble, feeble. There was feeble amount of light at sunrise. Horse, horse, horse. He had a hoarse voice. Indignantly, indignantly, indignantly. His opinions were ignored indignantly. Plenty, plenty, plenty. There is plenty of food for everyone. So children, we just learned 5 new words. Let's revise them. Curiosity, feeble, hoarse, indignantly, and plenty. I hope that you remember these words, and I hope that you have made a note of these words in your notebooks. Children, let's read the story from our textbook. The name of the story is A Mad Tea Party. Please open page number 88 of your textbook. Now, I will be reading this story, and I request you to point at the words as I read them. And if you don't have a textbook, listen to me carefully. Alice in Wonderland is a fantasy novel written by Lewis Carroll. It tells us of the adventures of a little girl called Alice who falls into a rabbit hole and finds herself in a fantasy world where funny people mingle with peculiar creatures. Here, she happens to attend a tea party with three of them: the March Hare, the Mad Hatter, and the Dormouse. Alice in Wonderland is a fantasy novel. This novel is written by Lewis Carroll. Do you know what happens in this story? The main character of this story is a girl named Alice. Now, Alice falls into a rabbit hole and she enters a world of fantasy. Now, a world of fantasy is something where unimaginable things or magical things happen. Now, in this magical world, Alice meets a lot of people, and these are peculiar or strange creatures. Now, Alice is attending a tea party, and along with her, there is a rabbit, Mad Hatter, and Dormouse. Let's see what happens at the tea party. There was a table set out under a tree in front of the house, and the March Hare and the Hatter were having tea at it. A Dormouse was sitting between them, fast asleep, and the other two were using it as a cushion, resting their elbows on it and talking over its head. Very uncomfortable for the Dormouse, thought Alice. Only as it's asleep, I suppose it doesn't mind. There was a long table set up in front of the house, which means everyone was having a tea party in the garden. And on the table, there was Mad Hatter and Bear Hare. Both of these are characters from the story of Alice in Wonderland. In between Mad Hatter and Bear Hare was sitting Dormouse. Dormouse was fast asleep. Children, do you know what a dormouse is? A dormouse is a type of mouse. So, since Dormouse was sleeping, Mad Hatter and Bear Hare were resting their elbow on Dormouse. The table was a large one, but the three were all crowded together at one corner of it. No room, no room, they cried out when they saw Alice coming. There's plenty of room, said Alice indignantly, and she sat down in a large armchair at one end of the table. "Have some wine," the March Hare said in an encouraging tone. Alice looked round the table, but there was nothing on it but tea. "I don't see any wine," she remarked. "There isn't any," said the March Hare. "Then it wasn't very civil of you to offer it," said Alice angrily. "It wasn't very civil of you to sit down without being invited," said the March Hare. "I didn't know it was your table," said Alice. "It's laid for a great many more than 3. It was a very large table. But in spite of that, all 3 of them were crowding a space at one corner of the table. Just then, Alice entered, and she was about to sit on the table. But all 3 of them started shouting. They said there is no space at the table. But Alice dismissed their opinions and sat at the table. "Your hair wants cutting," said the Hatter. He had been looking at Alice for some time with great curiosity, and this was his first speech. "You should learn not to make personal remarks," Alice said with some severity. "It's very rude." The Hatter opened his eyes very wide on hearing this. But all he said was, "Why is a raven like a writing desk? Come, we shall have some fun now," thought Alice. "I'm glad they've begun asking riddles. I believe I can guess that," she added aloud. "Do you mean that you think you can find out the answer to it?" said the March Hare. "Exactly so," said Alice. "Then you should say what you mean," the March Hare went on. "I do," Alice hastily replied. At least, I mean what I say, that's the same thing, you know." "Not the same thing a bit," said the Hatter. "You might just as well say that I see what I eat is the same thing as I eat what I see." Alice was sitting at the table, and now Mad Hatter also had something to say to her. He thought that Alice needed a haircut, and he said that. Alice did not like this comment. She thought that it was very rude of him, and she told him that. When Mad Hatter heard this, his eyes widened. He was shocked. He wanted to say something about it, but he said something completely different. He asked a question, and the question was, "Why are ravens like writing desks?" Children, do you know what ravens are? Ravens are birds that look like crows. And we all know what writing desks are. Do you think there is anything common in a raven and a writing desk? Of course not. Both are completely different things. But this was a riddle. And now Alice was very excited. In her excitement, she said, I think I can solve this riddle. When March Hare heard that, he asked, do you mean you can solve this riddle? And Alice said, yes. To that, March Hare had a very witty reply. He said, you should speak what you think. And Alice said, I always do that. I always speak what I mean. And to that, Mad Hatter had another witty reply. He said, it's not the same thing. You would say, I eat what I see, or I see what I eat. And both of these are two different things. You might just as well say, added the March Hare, that I like what I get is the same thing as I get what I like. You might just as well say, added the dormouse, who seemed to be talking in his sleep, that I breathe when I sleep is the same thing as I sleep when I breathe. It is the same thing with you, said the Hatter. And here the conversation dropped and the party sat silent for a minute, while Alice thought over all she could remember about ravens and writing desks, which wasn't much. Have you guessed the riddle yet? The Hatter said, turning to Alice again. No, I give it up, Alice replied. What is the answer? I haven't the slightest idea, said the Hatter. Nor I, said the March Hare. Alice sighed wearily. I think you might do something better with the time, she said, than waste it in asking riddles that have no answers. Alice had started thinking. She was thinking about the riddle. She was thinking about everything that she knew about ravens and writing desks. Mad Hatter looked at Alice and he asked her if she had solved the riddle. Alice finally gave up and she said that she can't solve this riddle. And she asked Mad Hatter what the answer was. And do you know what Mad Hatter said? He said he doesn't have the slightest idea. March Hare also joined him. Now Alice was very frustrated. She said that Mad Hatter should not waste people's time by asking riddles he doesn't have answers to. If you knew time as well as I do, said the Hatter, you wouldn't talk about wasting it. It's him. I don't know what you mean, said Alice. Of course you don't, the Hatter said, tossing his head contemptuously. I dare say you never even spoke to time. Perhaps not, Alice cautiously replied. But I know I have to beat time when I learn music. Ah, that accounts for it, said the Hatter. He won't stand beating. Now, if you only kept on good terms with him, he'd do almost anything you liked with the clock. For instance, suppose it were 9 o'clock in the morning, just time to begin lessons. You'd only have to whisper a hint to time, and round goes the clock in a twinkling. 1:30, time for dinner. Now Mad Hatter had something to say to Alice. He said that she doesn't even know time. In fact, she hasn't even met time. Now Alice replies very cautiously. She says that yes, she perhaps doesn't know time, but she knows that if she wants to start singing, she needs to beat him. But Mad Hatter reveals a secret. He tells her that time cannot be beaten. But there is a trick. If you get on good terms with time, he can change the clock for her, which means that if she behaves nicely with time, time can change the clock. I only wish it was. The March Hare said to itself in a whisper. That would be grand, certainly, said Alice thoughtfully. But then I shouldn't be hungry for it, you know. Not at first, perhaps, said the Hatter. But you could keep it to 1:30 as long as you liked. A bright idea came to Alice's head. Is that the reason so many tea things are put out here? She asked. Yes, that's it, said the Hatter with a sigh. It's always tea time and we've no time to wash the things between whiles. Then you keep moving round, I suppose, said Alice. Exactly so, said the Hatter, as the things get used up. But what happens when you come to the beginning again? Alice ventured to ask. Suppose we change the subject, the March Hare interrupted, yawning. I am getting tired of this. I vote the young lady tells us a story. I am afraid I don't know one, said Alice, rather alarmed at the proposal. Then the Dormouse shall, they both cried. Wake up, Dormouse! And they pinched it on both sides at once. The Dormouse slowly opened his eyes. I wasn't asleep, he said in a hoarse, feeble voice. I heard every word you fellows were saying. So, children, as I had told you in the beginning, Alice has fallen into the rabbit hole and she needs to get out of this rabbit hole so that she can go to her home. But for that, she needs to defeat time, and that is a very difficult task. So here, Mad Hatter is trying to help Alice. It might seem that he is not, but in reality, he is trying to help Alice defeat time. And he does that by revealing different riddles. I hope you enjoyed this fantasy story. On that note, I would like to take your leave. I will see you all in our next session. Until then, take care and stay safe. Bye bye.